Hello, welcome to this episode of The Martial Truth, where we're going to discuss the ramifications of being in a self-defense situation, which we've seen a lot of that in the news recently, and I just thought it would be an important topic to bring up. The other thing I want to mention is I'm looking to do a podcast where I answer your questions. So do me a favor, please send your questions to me, and in the future I'll put together a podcast where I answer those questions. Okay. So I think it'll be fun for me to answer the questions, and hopefully it'll be fun for people to hear the answers. And so do me a favor and send me your questions. Okay. So self-defense. As martial arts instructors, we're teaching techniques that are dangerous. We'll do this, and this will put the guy down, and all these different things. And what a lot of instructors don't teach the students is they don't teach them about the legal ramifications of being in a self-defense situation. And it's important that we educate the student on what to do, and to understand, And again, if you're being physically assaulted and someone's trying to do you serious harm, you can't be worried at that point about the ramifications. You have to be worrying about surviving. After all's said and done, if you survive the encounter, that's when the ramifications come into play. And hopefully I'm going to give you some things that you can do to help protect yourself from bad ramifications. So let's talk about a few scenarios. So recently in New York, we had a situation where a former Marine put a career criminal with over 40 arrests, who was waiting trial on breaking the bones of the face of an elderly woman, listed as one of the 50 worst and most dangerous homeless people in New York City. He's on a train car, and he's acting irrational, harassing people, threatening people, scaring the hell out of people. I was a transit cop. I worked in the New York City subway systems for 17 years. We jokingly would refer to the New York City subway system as the world's largest insane asylum. Okay. Everyday occurrence of people that have serious mental health issues that are harassing people and attacking people in the New York City subway. This is an everyday occurrence. Okay, so as a transit cop, not surprised. So passengers got nervous. The former Marine grabs them. A few other passengers help. They hold him down. The Marine has him in a chokehold. And sadly, or not, because again, prevented a whole bunch of future crimes, the criminal dies. He dies supposedly from the chokehold. Of course, the present DA in New York, he's pro-criminal. He only wants to, the good people he wants to go to jail. The criminals he wants to let out. And this has been a pattern since he's come into office a little over a year ago. All right. So, the racial hucksters in New York, they're all coming out of the woodwork. The Marine's white, so he choked the guy out because he was black. The only problem is all the other people on the car were of all kinds of different race. And the people that helped the Marine hold him down, they weren't white. Okay? So, the whole race thing, complete nonsense, except for the race hucksters who try to make money out of any type of situation where they can claim there's a racial element. So, initially, the Marine wasn't charged, and then last week, the pro-criminal ADA, Alvin Bragg, decided to charge him with no grand jury. So, okay. Now, obviously, the Marine has started a legal fund, which he's already raised over $2 million. Okay. They're going to have a hard time sending this Marine to jail. This is purely a case of self-defense. So, but let's go to another scenario of which I was there and actually spoke to the Good Samaritan who was involved. In the early 1990s, I was responsible for driving a duty captain around the city. The duty captain he's working overnight on the midnight shift, which I was working, and his responsibility is if there's a big incident, then he has to respond to that. So, okay, so there's an incident in the Bronx, and we go, and this was the incident. You have a young black male on the subway platform, 2 or 3 young black females on the subway platform, 5 or 6 other young black males on the subway platform. The single young male going to work, no criminal record, okay? The 3 females are being harassed by the group of males. The females creep closer and closer to the single male, and they ask him, hey, could you help us out? So when I asked the Good Samaritan, he said to me, when they told me they were scared, I figured we're all black. I'll just say something to the guys and they'll leave the girls alone. So he says to the guys, hey guys, why don't you just leave the girls alone? You're scaring them a little bit. And with that, the bad guys attack him. Okay? So again, no good deed goes unpunished. They attack him. Turns out he trains in martial arts. So he's doing pretty good against these guys, right? So him and 2 of the bad guys wind up down on the tracks. One of the bad guys yells up to one of the other bad guys, you have the gun, shoot him. The Good Samaritan thinks, oh my God, they're going to shoot me now. So he takes out a knife and he stabs the 2 guys that he was fighting on the tracks. They go down. He takes them right out. There's no gun. The guy up there has no gun. These 2 guys that were on the tracks were, they're getting their butts kicked. And they figured they'd yell up, and I guess maybe this guy would run. But he didn't run. So now the bad guys come down. They pick their friends up off the tracks. Of course, the 3 girls are where? They're in the wind. They're gone, right? So now they go upstairs and they leave. The bad guys leave. The Good Samaritan, being a good guy, he goes to the subway clerk and says, hi, I just stabbed someone here. There was an incident. Can you call the police? Okay, so the subway clerk calls the transit police. When the transit police get there, he's on the phone, the Good Samaritan. So the subway clerk points to him and says, that's the guy. So it came over as a stabbing. So the transit police officer walks over and says to him, where are you stabbed? He says, oh, I'm not stabbed. I stabbed the guys. So the transit cop says, well, what do you mean you stabbed the guys? And he tells the transit cop the story that I just told you. So transit cop knows there's a taxi stand upstairs. He knows if these 2 guys were stabbed and they left, right, there's a good chance they hopped in a cab to go to the hospital. And sure enough, that's what they did. So they went upstairs, and the cab company says, oh, yeah, we just took 2 guys that were stabbed to the hospital. So transit police go there with the Good Samaritan. They walk in. There's 3 bad guys sitting in the waiting room. The Good Samaritan says, those are 3 of the guys. And then the other 2 guys are in surgery, and they're both placed under arrest. So everybody's placed under arrest. But now you have to present the situation to the Bronx DA. The Bronx DA, after hearing all the details, decides to not press charges against the Good Samaritan and only press charges against the 5 or 6 criminals. So in this situation, it worked out very good for the young men. However, that's not to say maybe these guys don't turn around and sue him civilly, right? Which again, it just creates a problem financially for the guy. He's got to get attorneys, whatever else, right? But I asked the Good Samaritan when I saw him, I said, if you were in this situation again, like you were going to work, and someone needed help, would you help them? He said, yes, I'd help them, but I wouldn't carry a knife. Because he said in his mind, the knife kind of made it where he could have been perceived as the bad guy, even though he wasn't. And it worked out fine for him. So it's important to know someone attacks you or someone attacks someone else and you defend yourself or that person, and the person who attacks you and tries to harm you or that other person is seriously injured or killed. You kill them. Okay, so now the police are going to come, and now there's a guy on the floor who is either dead or in not good shape, okay? And now the police are going to be, looking at you saying you look fine, and they're going to think right away, there's a good chance they're going to think you're the bad guy. So hopefully there's other witnesses. You ask the witness to stay there, and explain that this guy attacked this old lady or whatever, attacked you, and you defended yourself, And what you're going to say to the police is you're going to say, this person tried to hurt me, and I defended myself. I defended myself against this person. That's what I did. And then you don't say anything else. You shut your mouth. You don't answer any other questions. If your name, obviously, where you live, that's fine. Any questions about the incident that you're involved in, you are not going to answer. You are not going to answer. You are going to get a lawyer, either legal aid, who they appoint to you, or you hire your own attorney if you're financially able to do that, and you are going to consult with an attorney. And if your attorney says, okay, now we're going to talk to the police, then we talk to the police. Now, you may wind up in jail or a holding cell for a night or whatever. Okay, fine. You say the wrong thing to the police. Remember, anything you say can and will be used against you. Okay? So, shut your mouth. You're going to be nervous. You're going to want to talk. You're going to want to ramble. Shut your mouth. Remember this video. Have the little Mike Calandra pop up on your shoulder, whispering, barking in your ear, saying, shut your mouth, shut your mouth, shut your mouth. Okay? This is vitally important. Okay. So, the other thing is if you're not feeling right after this encounter, maybe you have chest pains, maybe something's hurting, maybe, you feel lightheaded, okay? You should go to the hospital. Go to the hospital and get checked out. Okay, say to the police, listen, I want to go to the hospital. I'm feeling lightheaded. I'm just not feeling right. I'm feeling anxious. I'm having a hard time breathing, Go get checked out. Okay? So, and if you have a more serious injury, obviously go get checked out. Okay? So, another scenario. We have a bodega worker in New York City. A woman's in there with her child, and she tries to pay for food, and her welfare card doesn't work. So he says, oh, I'm sorry, it's not working. I can't give you the food. So needless to say, she loses her mind and says, you better give me the food. And she starts causing a ruckus. And then she says she's going to call her boyfriend. So, of course, the one on welfare has a cell phone, and she calls her boyfriend, who's a career criminal. And he comes in and attacks the bodega worker. The bodega worker is in a bad situation. He takes a knife and he stabs the criminal and he kills him. During that scuffle, the girlfriend stabs the bodega worker. Okay. So, who gets charged? Again, the wonderful DA Alvin Bragg, who thinks he's never met a criminal he doesn't like, charges the bodega owner. Does he charge the girlfriend with anything? No. And to this day, he hasn't charged her with anything. So there's such a public outcry in New York that he backs off and decides not to follow up on the charges of the bodega worker. Okay, but still, think about what that guy was put through for over a week. Not a young guy, okay? Think about what he was put through, all right? The good guy, the guy who's working in the store, who's defending his life and his property, is now being told by the district attorney, whose job is to protect the good guy and to go after the bad guy, is now doing the opposite. He's protecting the bad guys and going after the good guy. So now if you live in an area where you have a DA who's like that, well, you better realize if you engage in a self-defense situation, he's probably coming after you. Okay? So just keep that in mind. All right? I'll give you one more example. Another one recently happened in New York a few months ago. Everybody involved Spanish, all younger, teenagers, maybe a little older. Group of them wilding on the subway, scaring the hell out of everybody, and then they decide to pick on this one guy, and he fights back, and they're getting the better of him, and he pulls a knife and he stabs 3 of them, kills one of them. So of course, the wonderful Alvin Bragg charged him again, brought the case to a grand jury, and what did the grand jury do? They found he acted in self-defense, and they dropped all the charges. But you see the pattern. The pattern is the DA is going to side with the criminal in New York, and he's going to charge the good person. So again, you need to be aware of these things. Because again, I love the people that say to me, well, I would never allow myself to be put in that situation. Okay, again, they live in the world of unicorn and rainbows. Unicorns and rainbows. They're the same people that think, a lot of these people think, oh, criminals are just misunderstood. Oh, all criminals can be rehabilitated. Okay, believe me, they're not misunderstood, and most of them cannot be rehabilitated. Okay? We had one guy in our command that I myself had arrested 5 times. He'd been arrested in our command over 70 times. 70 times. Wasn't a violent criminal. A lot of it involved, minor property theft and minor things like that. But still, 70 times he'd been arrested. You think he's being rehabilitated? 70 times? I don't think so. Okay? So, virtually every criminal we arrest, it's not the first time he's been arrested. Virtually every criminal we arrest has a prior arrest. The time where you arrest a guy and it's the first time he's been arrested is normally for the police officer, you're shocked. You're like, wow, okay, this guy first arrest. Hopefully he learns his lesson. Okay? So, let's talk about a few things. So, if you're a woman and you're involved in a self-defense situation, especially against a male, you're usually good as gold. No one's going to show up at a scene, take a look at a woman, and look at a big hulking guy who's laying on the floor, either dead or incapacitated, and say, oh, this woman probably assaulted him. No. You're going to do what I say. You're going to tell the police, this man attacked me, I defended myself, and that's what happened. Okay? And you're not going to say anything else. That's it. So, and if you're charging, I want a lawyer. That's it. Okay, once you say the magic words, you want a lawyer, they cannot ask you any other questions. All right? Remember, police officer and detective for 22 years. Okay? So, I'm telling you this. And if you're studying martial arts and your instructor is never bringing up this subject, this is a big problem. Because it's great you know how to defend yourself. Okay, well, when you defended yourself, how do you defend yourself after that? After you've had to do some violence against a bad guy, against a predator of society, okay, now sure, that's over. The physical confrontation's over. Well, how do you protect yourself from the ramifications after that act? You keep your mouth shut. You get a lawyer. You do what the lawyer tells you to do. Okay? So, again, for women, if you're a teenager and a grown man attacks you, obviously, could be looked upon as different. Also, once they run the person who attacked you, and if it comes back and he's got, like the guy in New York, 40 prior arrests, okay, then the scales start to tip in your favor, where they say, oh, look at this person, never been arrested, maybe you're a grandma, or like me, you're a grandpa, and, this guy's been arrested 40 times, this guy's been a pillar in the community, obviously he's not the problem, this guy's the problem. That's the point you want it to get to. But you need it to get to that point. You don't say anything. Again, you get a lawyer. Okay? Have them appoint you one, legal aid, whatever, but you get a lawyer. Okay? So, you continue to go through the process, and, everything should work out good. So let's talk about the actual Self-Defense Act quickly. All right, the guy attacks you with the knife. He's still got the knife in his possession, and you take him down and he's still struggling. You're struggling with him. He's got the knife and you stomp him, and you kill him. Okay. That is what we call, that is reasonable. You're still both struggling for the weapon, and in the process of that struggle to prevent yourself from being stabbed or killed, he lost his life. That's reasonable. Okay, now you do the technique, and the knife goes flying, and now you hit him, and he's no longer a threat to you. He's either unconscious or he's incapacitated to the point where he can't harm you. And now you decide you're going to keep stomping on his head, or you're going to grab his head and you're going to be banging it off the floor. Okay, that's not reasonable. Okay, now you've crossed over into a big gray area where you could have a big problem. Okay, so one of the things you have to try to work into your training is the fact that you cannot let your anger overtake you in any situation, because bad things happen, and you could be held responsible for those bad things. All right, once he's no longer a threat, that's it. As a law enforcement officer, I had situations where got someone in handcuffs, and now someone else decides they want to hit my prisoner. And I immediately put a stop to that. And my rule was, once I got you in handcuffs, that was it. It was over. Now, if you're in handcuffs and I'm holding you and you try to bite me, well then, yeah, I may have to strike you again. I may have to put you down hard. If you try to kick me, I may have to do those things, even if you're in handcuffs. But I will tell you, probably 99 out of 100 criminals, when you have them in handcuffs and you have them in control, they know it's over and they stop. Okay? So, same thing. You're in a self-defense situation and you have a gun. And the guy comes up to rob you with a knife, and he drops the knife and he goes running, and now you decide to shoot him in the back 5 times. Going to be kind of a gray area. Depending on the state you're in, it could be really bad gray area. Something probably you don't want to do. Now, you're struggling. I recently posted a video of a gun disarm I show, and of course people say, oh, well, you couldn't disarm a gun. There's videos all over YouTube of people just literally grabbing the gun out of people's hands. There are, of course, legitimate gun techniques. Are you going to kick a gun out of a guy's hand? No, right? If the guy's 5 feet away from you, are you going to disarm him? No. Okay, but luckily for us, criminals are stupid, and most of them put the gun on us. Why? Because they don't want to let other people to see what's going on, and it gives them a sense of power, right? So now you snatch the gun out of the guy's hand, and he backs off and goes like this, and you go bang, 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 and shoot him. Could be a problem. You back off and you have the gun, and now he lunges at you, tries to grab the gun again. Now you shoot him. Now you're in a more legitimate situation. Okay? He's on the floor. You've got the gun. He's like this. You decide to shoot him. May not be deemed reasonable. May be deemed as unreasonable. Okay? So these are things you want to think about and have an idea about. And as instructors, you need to instruct your students in these areas. Okay? Your student gets the guy on the floor. He's incapacitated, right? And now your student keeps stomping on his throat, keeps dropping strikes on his throat after he's already no longer a threat. This becomes a problem. This is deemed as possibly not reasonable. Okay? So this is why you have to stay in control. I'm someone who's good at violence, and I've done a lot of violence on other human beings. All of them criminals. Okay? All of them deserving of it. The key to realize is when I did that violence, I always made sure I was in control. I never lost control, because if you lose control, that's when it could go from the good violence to the bad violence. And then you're looking at, serious legal problems. Okay. So I live in Arizona now. I have my concealed carry permit in Arizona, but being I'm retired law enforcement and I keep up with my qualifications, I'm allowed to carry a firearm in all 50 states. And if I travel, I bring my firearm. My philosophy is it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And, in my school in New York, I would, if I wasn't teaching, but I happened to stop in and one of my other guys was running a class, I'd take my jacket off and my firearm would be on my hip. And often a parent, usually new to the school, would say, "Oh, I thought you were retired." This is after I retired. And they would say, "Oh," I say, "I am retired. Why do you carry a gun?" And my standard response is, men like me carry guns so good people like you can sleep warm and safe in your beds at night. All right? And usually when I say that, they get it. And I say, and if you're walking across the street to the parking lot to drive home and I see 3 guys come over and start accosting you and your son, would you like me to come over and stop them? Well, yeah. Okay, well, that's why I carry a gun. Okay? I'm retired, but in my mind, I will not let harm come to another human being. Of course I will step in and I'll defend that person, defend myself, defend that person. That's just in my nature. I can't change that. All right. So one of the things I did moving to Arizona is I got insurance. Basically, simple way of looking at it is self-defense insurance. So if I am involved in a self-defense situation and it's deemed a self-defense situation, I'm covered legally. My lawyer fees are covered. So I'm covered, and I got that for both me and my wife in the event that I have to defend myself. And here's the thing. The insurance, it's not just if I have to use my firearm. It's if I'm in any self-defense situation. So if I defend myself with my hands or if, God forbid, I have to use a knife, whatever, right? So just to give you an idea, though, Arizona is a pro self-defense state. It's a pro firearm state. And I've said in previous videos, if you're female and you're able to carry a firearm, you should carry one because it is the great equalizer. It allows you to defend yourself against far bigger, stronger men, okay, no matter how much you train, okay? I purchased the insurance, and the one I use is the USCCA, United States Concealed Carry Association. And I have that insurance, and I renew it every year. And it's just, I hope I never need it, but if God forbid I do, it just makes it where I'm covered, right? In my case, I'm lucky. I know the law. I was a law enforcement officer. So a little bit easier in terms if I have to do something. But, again, if my wife has to defend herself, I want her to have that legal protection also. So these are all important things. So something you want to think about if you're training in martial arts. Again, this idea of, and just to mention, that insurance I just mentioned is not available in New York City. New York does not allow you to get that insurance. So think about that. That goes to show you how New York is going to slowly, and it is, going to become Gotham City. Just like in all those Batman movies where crime's out of control, well, that's the path. New York was there for a long time, and we cleaned it up. And now, again, you vote certain type of people in that love criminals, and then things go to crap. And that's what's happening in New York, and it's happening in other cities around the country. And again, where I live, there's no crime. And where I live, everyone owns guns, and they're all willing to protect each other. So it's a very safe environment. So the idea that New York won't even allow you to get that insurance is telling you they don't want you to protect yourself. Keep in mind, our neighbors to the north are the same way. Canada, you defend yourself, chances are you're the one getting in trouble. And Europe's the same thing. So it's important that our country doesn't go in that direction, and that we as martial artists, we want to be able that people can defend themselves and not get in trouble for it. Protect yourself. That's a human nature thing. If they take away our right to protect ourselves, where are we going as a society? All right. So hope you enjoyed this. I wanted to touch on this topic because of these things, these actions of self-defense. I think you're going to see more of it around the country because of the fact that they're treating criminals as though they're not criminals, and they're treating good people as though they are criminals. So you want to know this stuff so you can protect yourself if you're in one of these situations. As always, I want to say thanks. please click the like, subscribe button and share it. I'm getting a lot of good feedback. I'm enjoying doing the podcast. Maybe eventually at some point I'll run out of topics, but who knows? Again, get those questions into me. I want to do one where I answer your questions. All right. Take care.